Hi everyone. In today's video, we will be learning about the line-by-line explanation of the poem A Photograph by Shirley Toulson, followed by the exercise in the end. I will also be telling you about the literary devices used in the poem as they come. So please keep your pens ready and let's begin. The theme of the poem is mortality of a human life. As we all know that nothing or no one in this entire world is going to stay with us forever. If there is life, there is death. And hence, every life has a specific lifespan. And we are all going to leave this world sooner or later. The poem talks about the impermanence and short-lived life of human beings and how the poet is remembering her mother through a photograph that was taken years back when her mother was in her childhood and only about 12 years or so. Both the mother and herself have different memories from a single photograph. So let's move on to the first stanza of the poem. It talks about the photograph mostly, and the scene is beautifully laid out by the poet. The first two lines goes as, "The cardboard shows me how it was when the two girl cousins went paddling." So the cardboard here has a very specific reference towards the poem. The cardboard here shows that the photograph was taken a long time back when instead of a photo frame, the cardboard was used to support the photo since it was very old. And the term "how it was" refers to how the time and the things were at the time when the photo was taken. And in the line, "when the two girl cousins went paddling," we finally have the first two characters in our poem, which is the two girl cousins, that is Betty and Dolly. And the word paddling refers to walking barefoot in shallow water. So it is clear from this line that the photo was taken at the beach when her mother went with her cousins Betty and Dolly at the beach. Moving on to the third line. "Each one holding one of my mother's hands, and the big girl, some 12 years or so." So here we can further imagine how the photograph must have looked. Her mother was standing in between, and the two girl cousins, that is Betty and Dolly, were standing on either side of her holding a hand. It further tells us that during the time that the photo was taken, her mother, being the oldest, was 12 years or so. Coming to the fifth line, "All three stood still to smile through their hair at the uncle with the camera, a sweet face." So I'd like to mention that the literary device that is being used here is alliteration, which is the repetition of a consonant sound at the beginning of two or more consecutive words. So there are several examples of alliteration in the same stanza, which are "stood still," "my mother's," which is in the 7th line, and the last line of the first stanza that says "terribly transient." So the poet here is talking about the weather at the beach at the time of the photo and how the wind is blowing over the faces of the three girls present there who stood completely still for the photo, and how beautiful and innocent their smiles are looking through the blowing hair. Also, the third character that we now have is that of her uncle who is taking the photograph. Moving on to the next two lines, "A sweet face, my mother's, that was before I was born, and the sea, which appears to have changed less, washed their terribly transient feet." In the photograph, the poet is admiring the sweet face of her mother, and the last two lines of the first stanza are extremely important with perspective to the questions that are being asked in the exam. The sea mentioned here signifies eternity and immortality, as it hasn't changed much in all these years when a lot of things around it have changed completely. It also shows a comparison between her mother's mortality, which is the short short-lived life of a mother and the immortality of the sea. Since the sea was here long before when her mother was even born and is still here after so many years of her mother's death. The water from the sea has washed away the marks of her mother's feet on the beach sand, and the words terribly transient denotes how frighteningly short her mother's life was, where transient means short-lived. Another literary device that is used here is synecdoche, which is when a part represents the whole or vice versa. Here, the word feet represents the mother's life. So when it says terribly transient feet, it does not mean the short-lived feet, but instead it means the short-lived life of her mother. With this we come to the end of the first stanza, which talks about the photograph and the childhood phase of her mother. The second stanza talks about the adulthood phase of her mother as well as the poet when they were together and the memories they have, and how both of them are remembering different things from a single photograph. The mother is happy remembering the time that she spent with her cousins at the beach, but at the same time she misses the time that is being lost, whereas the poet is rather sad due to the loss of her mother, and this photo reminds her of the greatest loss of her life. Moving on, some 20-30 years later, she'd laugh at the snapshot. "See Betty and Dolly," she'd say, "and look how they dressed us for the beach." So 20 or 30 years after the photo was being taken, the mother is sharing her memories and she would laugh, remembering how they, that is, the elders, used to dress them up for the beach. The sea holiday was her past, mine is her laughter. Both ride with the laboured ease of loss. The poet compares the different memories they had of the photo. One is happy and the other one is sad. But it is clear that both have lost something. The holiday at the sea with her cousins and uncle was one of the greatest cherished memories of her mother, which is now in the past, and her laughter whenever she used to look at the photo was now her daughter's past, since she won't be hearing it again ever, and it has only become a memory. But both of them used to look at the photo and get disappointed, and they would writhe, that is, their smiles would become distorted and turned to one side. Please remember that both these lines are extremely important, as time and again questions have been asked using these two lines. The term laboured ease of loss here conveys that both the mother and the poet were disappointed and sad due to the loss they have experienced, but they were trying to cope their best. Hence the word used here is laboured. But at the same time, they knew that their loss is final and true and real, so they would have to eventually accept it. Hence the word used here is ease. Another poetic device that is used here is oxymoron, that is, a term that contradicts itself. So the words laboured and ease are opposite to each other but are used together. Moving on to the third and final stanza of the poem. The last stanza talks about the death of her mother. Now she's been dead nearly as many years that the girl lived, and of this circumstance there is nothing to say at all. It's silence silences. The poet's mother has been dead for almost the same amount of time as she was when the photograph was taken, that is 12 years. And the term the circumstance here refers to her mother's death, to which she has absolutely nothing to say at all. All the questions, all the answers, all the conversations with her mother have now come to an end, and there is only silence left. The poet has realized that the death of her mother is inevitable, and the pain of her death silences her, as there is nothing at all that she could do to change it or make the pain go away. That's all with the poem, and as promised, we will now be solving the exercise at the back. So the first question that goes is, what does the word cardboard denote in the poem? Why has this word been used? The word cardboard here refers to the frame as it supports the photo which is very old. Question 2. What has the camera captured? So in these questions, I will only be briefing you about the answers so that you can make a long, elaborate answer as per the requirement of the question. So answering the second question, the camera has captured the poet's mother and the two cousins, that is Betty and Dolly. And if it is asked in the short answered questions, you can also mention the surroundings of the beach and how both the cousins were standing on either side of her mother, holding her hands, and the smile that could be seen through the winds blowing over their faces. Question 3. What has not changed over the years? Does this suggest something to you? The second last line of the first stanza, and the sea which appears to have changed less. So as the sea symbolizes eternity and longevity, it is something that hasn't changed in all those years even after the death of her mother. This also suggests the comparison between the lifespans of the sea and that of her mother, one being immortal and the other being mortal. Question 4. The poet's mother laughed at the snapshot. What did this laugh indicate? So, the laugh indicates happy memories of the past, the feeling of nostalgia as well as the pain behind their laughs, as they both have lost something great. Question number 5. What is the meaning of the line, both rye with a laboured ease of loss? I'd like you to go back and rewind the part where I explained this sentence as it holds very significant meaning in the poem. Question 6. What does this circumstance refer to? So this circumstance referred to the present situation when the poet is remembering her mother through the photograph, and the circumstance is the death of her mother. Question 7. The three stanzas depict three different phases. What are they? So as I mentioned during the explanation part also, the first stage was the poet's mother's childhood. The second was the adulthood phase, where both are remembering different memories from the single photo. And the last and the final stage is that of old age and death. I hope you like this video. Stay tuned for more content.